Welcome to the A.L.L podcast.
We're the Academy of Logic and Light. I'm Meagan.
I'm Kat.
I'm Julie. We are an ethical community education platform that provides a safe space for people to practice their spirituality without indoctrination.
I love the idea of podcast. I'm so glad we're here,
Me too.
talking.
Yeah.
And it's fun to not just be here, but, to have a way that we be sharing with the community, because I know that it was, a whirlwind for a minute, and there was too much communication, and then it got dialed back to maybe too little, and so I'm glad that we're getting back out there and
Me too.
reaching out to people.
It feels good.
Yeah.
It feels really good.
Yeah.
And I have to, my ideas are not stopping. So if I ever seem manic, just tell me to calm the fuck down, because my ideas just never stop.
No,
That's good. Yeah.
It feels good to have them back.
Yeah.
They were on pause.
Oh, yeah. I was, so Saturn is anyway, something Mercury, whatever.
The planets are doing something.
Saturn and Pluto are having a moment,
Mm.
but they were they were describing all of these things, and they're if you felt like you've been stuck in a rut, this is a time of clarity that you might notice, and then it was especially if you're one of these two signs, and one of them was Capricorn, and I was that's what Julie needed.
Yeah.
Now that Mercury is direct too, it's oh fuck yes, finally the shadow period's gone. We couldn't have planned this better. It literally ended on the 31st.
Yeah.
Especially with all this technology. Anything could happen. So yeah.
And it would.
Yeah, it definitely would.
It already is.
Yeah, facts.
We didn't need
We're
anything
gonna have
working
this
against us.
set up in 15 minutes next time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
we're gonna be set.
15
Totally.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Should we introduce ourselves?
As the school?
Hi, we are.
Yeah. Sure, why not?
Okay. So we're the Academy of Logic and Light. I'm Meagan.
Kat.
Julie.
And we are, I don't know, we've been around.
We've been around. We've been around, even though it doesn't look like it sometimes.
Yeah.
We've been here. We're doing our monthly new moons for the community, where we are present and local, and trying to bring in fun activities for the community. Trying to incorporate local businesses and growing through things that way, and then building our education platform from scratch, which is super fun. It is fun. I'm enjoying this actually.
Yeah.
I'm having a blast with you guys, and
For sure.
getting to know y'all more each time, and every event. Y'all, there's so many layers, and
Yeah.
it's been fun.
Yes.
And literally learning all of this stuff from scratch has been insane. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been, a whirlwind.
A whirlwind. They're you're building a school, and they're where is it? I'm you have to start way before
Yeah.
the physical stuff.
Welcome
Yeah.
to the internet.
Yeah. Right now we're here.
Yes. On the couch.
Yeah. Exactly. Where it's safe.
I agree. I think that it's been so fun and awesome. It is a little bit like climbing a mountain when you've never climbed a mountain and you don't know how any of the gear works.
Yes.
So it is a step forward, a step back, 2 forward, 1 back, sometimes 5 back, and then a leap forward.
Yeah.
I definitely think over the last year we have learned so much and grown so much that we really have solid footing on where we want to go
Yeah.
and what we are building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's, every time I think about it, it's one of the things that I just lights me up. I'm so excited, which is awesome in a world where a lot of things are not so exciting. And I'm excited that we're finally reaching a point where we are almost a day or 2 away from adding other educators and getting classes started,
Yeah.
which will be so awesome.
So excited.
Yes. It's going to be so good.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, numerology came in today, human design came in today, and one other thing.
That's
So those will be really cool platforms to keep adding in.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm super excited. I feel like we've been doing good stuff, and it's been a mountain climb, like you say, and it's we're all just trying to spot each other, but we're all trying to stay on the mountain, and one of us falls, and we're pulling each other back up, and it's, but it feels like the work that needs to be done. And I feel like sometimes it's so hard there are just more challenges, right? Because it's not been out there. It's not been accessible, and people have been really missing those things. And because of that, we get this chance and this opportunity to, like, help move forward with that community. And, because it's not the average or what you expect, it feels like there's been more hurdles than necessary.
For sure, yeah. Especially because there isn't another platform or school like the one that we're trying to create, so we don't really have an example of, like, this is how to make these things work. We're just figuring it out as we go.
And it's funny because every time we explain it to someone, they're like,
interesting.
I promise this is much cooler than I'm making it sound.
It makes sense in here. One day it will make sense out there.
How much time do you have? Because I can lay it out. You're gonna love it,
right?
But it doesn't exist yet.
Silly question. Do you hear a voice in your head when you, like, think and process stuff?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. A couple.
Yeah.
Is that telling?
Your voice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I sometimes, like, I think when I speak to myself as a you, it's like my higher self, and when I'm speaking to myself as an I, it's like my ego. So, like, there is two voices.
Yeah.
And I have to differentiate because one is so much ruder than the other. And like, one is actually, I think the higher self one is actually the rudest. Because she's like,
get it together.
We've done this. Like, why are you doing this again? But yeah, there's definitely voices.
Yeah. That's so interesting because mine's opposite.
Interesting.
When I think about it. Like, my I is my higher self and my you is my ego.
I wish
you need to get your shit together.
Calmer.
And I'm like, listen, bitch. My shit is as together as it can be today.
Yeah,
but I also do this weird thing where, like, I didn't ever knew this happened until my kids pointed it out. Where I will change my voice when I'm talking to myself.
Oh.
Do you guys talk to yourself out loud?
Yes.
I think I do. There's no one to confirm it.
Yeah. Winston gets confused sometimes. He's like, is she talking to me or her?
Oh, they definitely get confused.
Yeah. But I'll do this, like, weird thing where I'll be like, la da da, and, like, just talking normal, and I'll be like, but did I do those things? And, like, totally do some weird thing. And my kids will be like, who are you talking to like that? And I'm like, well, myself. This is a meeting. Obviously. Get out. It's closed door.
Who invited you? Like,
that's
funny. Here?
Do you?
Yeah. So it's just, someone asked me the question, and they were like, is it your own voice? And I was like, I talk to myself so much out loud that she's in here too. Like, I don't know which one's the cause and effect of each other, but I'm like, I talk too much. Like, my processing is, like, getting it out. And so for me, like, I think that's why that's the voice in my head, is because it's the exiting that is what processes for me.
Yeah,
but,
which I think is super healthy and important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's so interesting, because I have heard people say that they don't have a voice. And I'm like,
interesting.
What happens in there then? Like,
who
how
tells
do you
you
know?
what to do?
Yeah, how do you know what you're doing all the time if no one's in there talking to you?
Right? They're not keeping track.
Yeah.
That's weird.
My friend, she has my friend of a friend of a friend who knows, but they only see pictures, is how they said they see everything, and that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's so, hieroglyphics are not as efficient.
It's 2023.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Well, okay, maybe it's emojis. This is modern day hieroglyphics.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
And they do help.
They definitely do. Yeah. That's funny. What brought us all to this point, I guess?
Yeah. To the vision of creating this school and platform.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
You go first.
So for me, it really started in 2016 when I was in massage therapy school. Well, I went to massage therapy school because of a car accident that I was in 2012.
Oh, wow.
And I think this story is so universal. So many people have an incident that happens that doesn't just create, like, physical trauma, but creates emotional trauma, and you cannot find reprieve. You know, you're kind of gaslit by Western medicine. And so I just kind of went on this journey of, like, there has to be something that exists, you know. And obviously I knew about holistic health and things like that. My mom was always kind of like a kitchen witch type person, and was really into, like, herbs and healing within the home, but not so much with the physical body, you know, bones and muscles and structure and stuff like that. And so I went down this path of trying to find something that was going to help, which is what led me to crystal healing. And I actually got certified as a crystal healer in 2014. And while I was in that class, I met a lady that does emotion code, if you know what that is. Mm-hmm. And so I worked with her. She was also a practicing shaman. And that experience changed my whole trajectory and vision of life. You know, when you have those kinds of experiences that just shatter what you thought you knew about the world or what God is and all those types of things, it's hard at the same time that you're like, I have never seen anything more clearly than I see it in this moment, which is such an interesting dichotomy, you know. But I think that that's very common for people to go through as they are on these paths. So as I was working through all of that, I was like, I really think I want to be an emotion code practitioner. And so I was kind of looking into that. It's hard to become a practitioner of something like that without also having a license to put your hands on somebody's body. There's a lot of liability that can come with those types of practices. And also, I love the energetic aspect of it, but in my experience and what I came to know is that energy gets trapped in the physical. If you can't work on the physical body at the same time as the energetic body, it just repeats. It's still there. Your body still holds it just cycles. So then I went to massage therapy school. So while I was in massage therapy school, there was another student that we kind of were having these conversations about how we got to that point and how it took us years to get to that point, and that, you know, like, I wish there was a place where all of this was, that I could just have a trustworthy place to be like, okay, I'm having this issue, I don't know enough about this, I don't know how to solve this problem, where do I go? Because, you know, like, back, and this was years ago, like, this was in 2016, so even back then it was more fragmented than it is now. I think it's getting smaller. Some of that's good, some of it's bad. That can be a different conversation. But it was so fragmented in the way that different lessons could be, where you could go to find help, a teacher or a practitioner. So he and I actually went and looked at the Warm Springs building on Beck Street in North Salt Lake. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that building. The history of that building is phenomenal. It's on Ute Indian sacred ground. And of course, then it was colonized. And it became a bohemian bathhouse in the 1900s. And then it became like a community pool. There's a natural warm springs that runs into that.
I remember you telling me about this.
To the building. And then it kind of went into disrepair. In the 80s and 90s, it was the Children's Museum. And then when the Children's Museum moved to the Gateway in the early 2000s, that building just was completely left.
Okay.
Which is so sad. But it's on the historical registry, and so they couldn't tear it down. Nothing could be done with it, but it was zoned park space. And so it was a huge issue. And back then, the city put it out to bid to have people do something with the property. And there was a developer that wanted to come in, of course, turn it into apartments. And the community of Marmalade was like, absolutely not. And so we were like, we would love to turn it into a community center, open the pools, have rooms for practitioners, a classroom. You could put a garden on the roof, a restaurant. Like, the building is huge. It's a very large building. But it's in such bad condition, it would be millions of dollars to get it up. Even just to code, let alone putting anything else in it that you want functional. So that kind of died. So that really sparked a passion in me of wanting to create a safe space for people to be able to find, especially if you're going through a current trauma, then you're also struggling to find support or help or information or a practitioner or whatever it is. So after all of that happened, I just sat with it for a few years, and different things came up here and there that just didn't align. And then there's nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't what I needed. And then, probably like some of you, heard the call that came out from Julie. And I was like, okay, finally, I've been asking for this for so long. If this is something that is on my path, I cannot do it alone. We have to have a team. And so I met with Julie, and over the last year, it's just blossomed and bloomed. And that's
crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And that's the story of how I got to this point.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
What brought you here?
Why am I here? Well, I got in my car today. So getting to this point and starting the academy really was a lot. Like, it was a really long journey, but not a long time. Like, it's so, time feels dilated. This whole experience has just, like, changed my perception of it and the way that things are going. So I think it was 2020, I got this planner, and it asked a whole bunch of different, like, areas of your life for you to focus on and think about and then just kind of brainstorm. And it used connection as one of them, and it kept bringing up, like, what are your community goals? And I was like, what a weird question. Like, I'm not thinking about community, like, I want to make $1 million and I want to get to next Tuesday and, like, we'll just go from there. And so I was like, what a weird thing. And I was going kind of through, like, a best friend breakup at the time. And so every time community came up, I was having the hardest time being in a community that I felt safe in, because I had just left a religion a while before and was still dealing with the fallout of those people in my life. And it was more like the relationships that I had that really affected was the hardest part about leaving religion for me. I felt so free, like, personally, and it was so hard that the people in my life were not embracing, like, free choice Meagan. Like, and so it was really hard for me going through that, and it was a really, like, slow, long journey. And this was kind of at the bottom of that journey when I was like, what community? Like, I don't know what's out there. And so I was answering all these questions and, you know, brainstorming all the different things. And then let's see if I can find the community section. Maybe. Community connection. And it just asked questions like, what are your friendships like? What do you do together? And I was like, thanks. Thank you for that.
Too soon.
Yeah. Like, no, I'm trying to get better. Why would you ask me to focus on that? And then it asks about, like, everyday life stuff. But then it goes on to say, so it asks, that's all about friendship for the first 6 questions. And then it says, describe your community. And I was like, oh, community is adjacent to friendship, but it's not only friendship. And so I was like, that's really interesting. And so I started just kind of going through, and it asks, how do you engage with your community? And I wrote down. And these were just questions that I had never thought before. And I was at this super low point where I was missing the community in my life, and I was like, oh, okay, let's see where we're going. And so I just kind of wrote, and like here's my response. Volunteer work, going out and making friends, asking for help and helping, taking classes and teaching. Was how I was like, this is where I fit in my community. And then, weirdly, it asks for your, like, purpose. Instead of a word of the year or anything, it says, what's your purpose? And I wrote 2 purposes. One is, my purpose is to raise contributing members of society. Very important. And then my second purpose, I wrote, to spread freedom and help others know themselves. Which, there I was at like this super low point where I felt like I didn't have community. After learning that, about manifestation, I realized that's what I was doing in this process. Questions I had never asked myself or even thought of, and I was just like, what would that look like? And I put myself in that situation, and I wrote down, this is what it looks like. This is what I'm doing. And then I'm like getting goosebumps because I haven't read that bit about like the volunteering and taking classes and stuff. And so anyway, I brought this because I knew I'd written that as my purpose, but didn't realize how far it went.
Specific.
Yeah. And so I like put myself in that place and was just like, all right, let's see what we're doing. And, it's been a few years since then, and it total happenstance that I even found out about this group. I was just, trying to be in that community on, like, a Facebook group. And I saw Julie post once, and I was like, I'm not available for this one. Like, bummer. And you were like, we're holding more. Like, join my group. And so I joined the group, and I went to the next one, and it was just a beautiful example of people sharing their gifts. And it was just a safe space where everyone was encouraged to be themselves and to connect. And there was, I know that the efficacy of the school has really been stressed. And I think that created the space that I went into that day and felt so just like healed by. I went into that space and everyone was just open and sharing, and as like I would not have gone into it thinking, we need more ethical spaces, because I was relatively new to everything. And so, but I could feel the difference because I've been to many classes and like worked into different groups and stuff that have just been these, open or free groups. And when I went into that moon circle, the feelings, just everyone was working together, but also like it was everyone's individualness was shining. And that was what was important in the group. It wasn't like, look, we're a homogenous like group and we all believe and practice and do the same thing. It was the way that the spotlight was shined on everyone's talents. And that helped so much. And I was just like, I left. And I have a friend who I was kind of like dabbling in doing like a moon circle or something with. And I was just like, this is the best, like, these are the best people. And she's the one that owns the Airbnb that I was like, hey, this was such a good space, and like they're looking to collaborate with people. I think that we should at least collaborate with them and like see what's going on. And so then I went to, I don't think I made it to any other moon circles, but I remember just kind of communicating with Julie, and I was like, hey, I'll do your next moon circle. And it was a lot of prep. And I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. But I had such a good time and really enjoyed like just being able to volunteer and like put something together. And it just like was was the greatest space and, like, group to work with, and, like, I keep saying, like, and I just appreciated all of the vibes, and I appreciated all the people who were just coming together as a community, because I've built my community up, but seeing it come together like that I was like, this is the space that people need. This is the space that I needed when I was in my big life transition. And I don't think that everyone needs to go through a crisis to get to this point, but I do think that there are people in crisis who are looking for this. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes me happy to be part of a space where people can land in a safety net and they're not getting indoctrinated and brought into something that's not helpful, mm-hmm. something that's going to lead them, into another direction. And I feel like here we just encourage so much authenticity.
Yeah. And there's no agenda.
Yeah, mm-hmm. There's no agenda.
Sometimes to a fault.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at our whiteboard of bullet points. We know exactly really what we're doing. Yeah. Yes. And so I just really was drawn into the community. One thing I think of is when we were just on a phone call with one of our teachers, and she was talking about her practice and wondering where to draw the line between her practice and her teaching. And Kat, I said it perfectly mm-hmm. when she said, we're not here to edit you. You teach what you want. We are the platform to deliver that message. Mm-hmm. We aren't, going to say, hey, that we don't need to do that, We're here to help encourage people, obviously we do care about ethics. Yeah. And so that's a way that will help kind of make sure that our teachers are homogenous in a way, but we're not asking anyone to change who they are. We want them to show up and be authentic and individual, mm-hmm. and we want to bring all those people together into the community and to help each other, because
that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Support and uplift.
Yes. Yeah.
What a concept.
Yeah. I know. Wild.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess that's how I got here. It was a crazy story. It was mostly about how I met Julie at One Moon Circle, and I was like, and just the vibes. I'm here because of the vibes. We're good, and they still are, and I'm here to help curate good vibes.
Oh, I love that. Vibe curator. Put that on a business card.
Perfect.
Yes.
I love that.
Love it. Yeah.
Okay.
Vibe curator. Okay, what brought me here? I guess I'll also go back to about 2016. I was living in New York as a flight attendant, and I was not dealing with my stuff. I was not dealing with my stuff at all. I was partying way too hard. I was starting to get a lot of injuries, and with those injuries, they put me on a lot of pharmaceuticals, which I didn't know anything about. And yeah, essentially, I ended up being on so many things that I shouldn't be alive, to be perfectly honest. And that's also when I started realizing, I have a bigger purpose in life, and I can't die until I fulfill my purpose, which is also a dangerous place to be when you know you can't die. So I was just literally traveling the world, jumping on moving trains, very reckless behavior. And I knew I had to make a change, so I moved as far away from New York as possible to L.A., and thought that maybe a change of scenery and friends would help. But the work was internal. Can't run from that. And eventually I started making small transitions, but the first time I started anything spiritual as far as outside of religion, I had a tarot reading, and I had never really had one before. And basically the tarot cards told me if I didn't change my life, I would die. And I was like, haha, whatever. And then the second tarot reading I had told me if I didn't change my life that I would die. And so then I was like, okay, made more changes. And then I just knew I needed an even bigger change, and kind of pointed at a map and ended up in Utah. And in a long, long story shorter, I drove to Utah overnight in a big storm. I made it here, didn't have anywhere to go, didn't have any friends, didn't even have winter clothes. It was February. And just literally found a basement apartment. And I had been living in my car for a while, so, like, things were rough. And the third tarot reading also told me if I didn't change my life, I'd die. So I was like, all right, we need to take these things serious. And then I got to my brand new apartment, and it was super haunted. And I've never really dealt with anything like that. And gateway drug is that on the same block of the house I was living, there was a crystal store. And I went in and I was like, what do you guys got for ghosts? I need help. And it was fine. Like, I can coexist, but the ghost touched me, and I'm like, do not consent to touch.
Yeah,
I can't live
scary.
like this. I'd rather go back to my car. But anyways, they were just so kind and patient, and they were teaching me about these different crystals, and she's like, sleep with this one under your pillow, this one for, like, women empowerment, and I was like, okay, so gateway drug into the crystals, and then slowly it turned into astrology, and then I just couldn't get enough. I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I literally took any class I could find online. I lived on Udemy. I lived on pretty much any YouTube I could get. I was just absorbing as much information as possible and slowly dealing with my internal stuff and getting on the right track. But I did a guided meditation through this class, and I had a memory of when I was a kid that I knew I was going to be opening some sort of a women's community center when I was like 10. So much the fact that I remember drawing out floor plans on a piece of paper. I knew details. And I didn't know to what capacity. I was a child, but I knew it was going to be something teaching women something to empower themselves to get out of bad situations, which is kind of deep for a kid, to be honest. So I kept going with it, and then, yeah, one day it just hit me that I'm in Utah. This is where we're like watching all these people coming out of different situations and trying to grow, but there's no real, once you leave the church, there's just nothing telling you, guiding support. You, yeah. Nothing. You're just out there, and it could be dangerous. Mm-hmm. There's some scary people that are looking to profit off people who are just looking to be led, you know, and you have to have a really strong sense of self. So, yeah, I just kept doing the work and kept learning, and one day I just got a message from my spirit guides to write a TikTok and record it and send it out on the first try, and 25,000 views later. And my emails were exploding, and my phone was going crazy, and I was like, oh my god, okay, this is a lot more necessary than I even knew. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it led us to this amazing space, meeting amazing people on the same journey. So yeah, that's the quick version of the story.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No more death messages from the tarot cards.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Less. Get off my back.
Yeah, right. I'm like, okay.
Or haunted apartment.
Yeah. No haunted. Yeah, we're like living good now.
Yay.
Fingers crossed.
Made it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my story.
Okay. So now we know where we were.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
Good transition. Love that.
love that for us.
So actually, in the present, where we're at right now is building the platform and empowering teachers, but also knowing that the teachers are students, the students are teachers, building up people from literally the ground up, people who have been forgotten, people who have been hiding in the shadows, people who are sitting on the outside of society, like empowering all the people to become the best version of themselves, and just kind of get out there. And that community part, I know there's like a lot of people who practice this sort of spirituality that are more hermits, that have problems trusting because of hurt in the past. So the goal is that we're building this safe space so that people can come feel that they can be authentic, like you mentioned, and feel safe to share their amazing gifts and talents, and also come and learn new things. So that's the present. And then the going is eventually to move this online platform to the actual physical location and be able to have, how I see it in my head, small houses throughout the community of like community centers, essentially like a spiritual gym, safe space for people to practice their spirituality without being indoctrinated and come and be able to like read in silence. A lot of people have left one religion or something along those lines but want to continue their practice but can't do it at home with their family members. So providing that physical space would be ideal. Having the classrooms in there, having a free library that we don't have to move every single month to every part, our free library, taking our donations for our unhomed, I don't want to call it a project, but I guess a project could be the word, our unhomed projects for making our amenity kits and being involved more in the community that way. But also teaching people how to cook for your gut health so that you can strengthen your intuition, and just pretty basic things of farm to table, because that is, people are always asking me, how is that spiritual? I'm like, that is the most spiritual. What you feed your body is what you put out. So teaching people that, and then having the community space to eat together, where a lot of people don't have that anymore, family-wise, if they were rejected from their families for finding a new spiritual practice. So that is essentially the longer term goal, and hopefully this can be duplicated for other cities and states so that we can keep growing. And it looks like a grid system in my head. That's the easiest way I can describe it. But having these pockets of 15-minute intervals of 30 minutes away of having multiple houses you could go to and meet with people and have your sound baths or meditate in silence or go meet someone for the dinner there or something. So, I'm rambling now. There's so many visions in my head of what it looks like.
Yeah.
But what does it look like for y'all?
Oh, I love that you brought up the way that the spiritual interacts with like the practical in our lives. And I think that that really embodies a lot of what to me is important to teach and like help people, because you can have your own spiritual practice. I mean, that's kind of the goal. Like, we're not saying join us for a coven. We're saying come and let us help, like, elevate each other's practices, whatever it is. Yeah. And so I think it's really great that, one, we're just kind of accepting everyone no matter where they're at and, like, what they need. But we're also giving them that safe space to be what they need. And I also, you know, the idea that we're going to be able to do, like, farm-to-table stuff, it doesn't you don't have to relate it directly to the spiritual, like, because our personal health is really going to reflect, and just like Kat said when she was introducing and talking about her journey, like, if you can't release it from the physical and you can't process it physically, you're just not going to get the same flow and the same movement that really helps your spiritual, your happiness, like your mental health is all so connected with everything. And I think that making it not a narrow space of, oh, just come here and we're going to do magical stuff. It's, you know, come here and we're going to help you be magical.
I love that.
I totally agree. I think that we, as this kind of, I don't want to label it New Age because that's not the word, but this alt community, really, I think the pendulum swung so far into this space of wanting to be disconnected from being human. Like, once you're enlightened, then the rest of it doesn't matter. And I think there's so much falsity in that. We are here to be human. That is the purpose of this existence, in my opinion. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in these human bodies. And so there has to be a balance of learning how to be in your body and being okay with it, even when you feel like you want to rip your skin off because it doesn't feel comfortable. And there's so much to work through in the way that we've been conditioned to feel about our bodies and to feel about being human and what that means, and how there's such a disconnect between I'm a spirit living inside of a body. Yeah, sure. But you're a body. So
right now.
be in the body, own the body, you know, as well as you can. This vessel is hugely important to that journey of whatever it is that's trying to get you to the next level. So to ignore it is really, it's not helpful. So I really love that. In my mind, I see a very similar vision, but I look at it as kind of like, I guess, a beehive. So a place that is, everybody has a purpose and everybody is equally important. There is no hierarchy, really. You have to work in a symbiosis for the whole thing to work. And then, you know, helping people be able to leave that hive and create their own hive over here, and create their own hive all over the place as a, you know, network of everybody working in a symbiotic relationship, but having a place to come to I need support about this, I don't know how to do this, because nobody knows how to do everything. That's ridiculous. Yeah. And it's ridiculous that we've reached a place as a society where we feel ashamed to say, I don't know. Because we don't know.
We don't know. Right. No one knows this.
Yeah. And nobody can be an expert in all things. It's very rare to be an expert in one thing. So I agree with that vision of, you know, holding space, supporting, uplifting, creating, and helping people to do that for themselves in their own practices, in their own communities, all over the world, hopefully, at some point.
Big goals for sure.
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah. Well, and I really love kind of the event aspect of what we've been doing and trying to curate spaces. Like, I think once we can have that, like, physical location, that'll be really great. But I think just kind of creating not only the safe space, but, like, a space that people can come to like, have a specific experience. So if you're a teacher and you're like, oh, I want this, you know, retreat, or I want to contribute to, like, this aspect of something, and then we want, like, I would love to be the person who just helps connect all the dots of, like, let's have an awesome retreat, let's put 5 people together, and, like, let's, like, go change lives, and let's, you know, band together. And I really am drawn, because for me, that was the part of the community that I wanted, was, like, activity together. And I love classes and teaching and just, like, finding different ways that we can make education, like, accessible to people, because I've been looking, like, all over for an astrology class that I'm like, oh, I just really want to start one. And it was all about, like, finding the teacher that was right for me. And the teacher I ended up going with has, like, a tuition plan that he was like, oh, yeah, you know, if you're worried about pricing, like, reach out to us, and this is kind of where we wiggle room, and, you know, we're going to talk about it. Because, and he always says, no one should be priced out of practicing an ancient, like, I can't remember exactly. But anyway, he's like, we don't want anyone to be priced out of it. And this is an ancient science. This is knowledge that should be accessible. If we were making these things accessible, our communities, our spaces would be so much, like, sure, it might get a little muddy, but when there's gatekeeping, it just stops the curiosity and it stops the growth. That's how I feel. Is there's so many times that, like, there's that line that you have to cross, and you have to be a specific person to walk across that line. And I feel like, you know, I'm here to break down those boundaries. I want everyone to be able to get what they need and be supported where they are. And, you know, there shouldn't be boundaries of, you have to fit this mold to get in. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point. I think that it reminds me of when people say, I don't want anyone to be offended by what I'm about to say. This is all just my own opinion. I'm just speaking for myself.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of when people say things like, you have to charge for the energetic exchange.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people have created a toxic relationship with money, and they don't want to say, I'm going to charge because I like money, or I need money, or I want money.
Mm-hmm.
Money is a necessity in the world that we live in. There's nothing wrong with saying you like money or you want money at all. I think the energetic exchange, at least for me, and why I want to educate people as much as I can without charging anybody anything, first of all, is because I have other revenues of income, so I don't need that money. But my energetic exchange is vertical, it's not horizontal. So the more I share, the more I receive. It's a flow that comes in from the top and out. So I don't need the exchange to be on a horizontal platform. And I think that there is a certain group of people that are in this culture that feel like that is where their energetic exchange comes from. And so they charge extreme prices for information that should not be gatekept. It's a lot of these are ancient practices, and they were freely taught and freely exchanged and practiced, and it's kind of disheartening for me to see when that happens, people that gatekeep. And I do understand there's a component of, when you've spent your own time and money and energy learning the practice and mastering the craft, that you want to have some sort of reciprocation. I agree with that. I think that's fine. But I also think that some of that energetic exchange comes from the top down. And, to charge somebody $20,000 for a master class is
infuriating.
And so to be able to create a space to share like they did in the ancient days, to come together and practice and learn from each other and be able to grow and connect, I think is so amazing.
Well, and I think it's hard because we also are, at least I've seen a lot of people who are just creating classes because they have, collected enough data, and now they're just trying to make money off of it. And they're just like mass producing courses, and they're not trying to appeal to a specific audience or even teaching the most accurate information. They're just putting it out there because it's what's making money. It's what's hot right now. It's what's in. And I think of that, and I also, there is 100%, I love what you said, Kat, because you should value yourself. You should value the work and the time and the effort it took you to learn something. But there is a big difference because if your energy came from a financial exchange, for me that is so hard. So I just think of the inverse of that is somebody now paying for your energy that you wouldn't share it with, if you tie yourself financially to making that your energy exchange, someone can, send you money, and then you're kind of almost just that's where it's coming from, right? That's where your source is. I think of the predominant church here is the LDS church, and I think of how they teach that love of money is bad, but then
how ironic.
Then then it comes out that they've been hiding money, and they have these huge stores of money, and it just this is in no way to say anyone who's part of the church is in the wrong, but it's just so I look at something like that that's just taking advantage and kind of talking out of both sides of their mouth. And I really want to create that ethical and just a place where people can go and they can trust that what they're putting in is benefiting who they are thinking, and I really want to, be able to create that space for people and help them, feel comfortable in a community that they're not being taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like transparency is going to be a really big part of what we do, like financials, but also we're offering so much for free, but then we're tiering it out at literally the most affordable levels possible. Yeah, but I think transparency, that's I think where me and Daniel talked earlier today a little bit about how the Mormon Church it is what it is, but it also has been good for the community in certain aspects. But I think the lack of transparency is really what kills it, you know, and like you said, also talking out both sides of your mouth, and it's not transparent at all. No. You know, you guys don't love money, but we love money.
Yeah,
like what?
It's wrong for thee.
Yeah,
but...
you can't eat, but we're gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not great.
Yeah.
But I think the goal is essentially like we all come together and build each other up, and it's actually pretty simple. It sounds so hard to explain to people sometimes because they're like, what are you doing? But they're waiting for the sales pitch. They're waiting for how is this person going to indoctrinate me or take my money? They're literally waiting for it. And we're like, that's it. That's the whole thing we're doing. And they're like, glitchism.
Yeah.
The
uncomplicated makes people's brains be like, wait, it should be complicated. It should be hard.
It's the World
When
Wide
really it's
Web.
just the simplest.
Yeah, we're
idea.
sharing information.
Yeah.
Ethically, transparently.
Yeah.
Wow.
Weird.
Yeah. Thanks for joining the A.L.L podcast.
To find out more, you can find us online at academyoflogicandlight.org or on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Academy of Logic and Light.
If you live in the Salt Lake Valley, we'd love to see you at one of our upcoming events.
And don't forget to support our growth by joining our Patreon.
Until next time, lead with logic and light.